Who's ready for some more PragerU? I really don't want to do this, but Jesus, I they keep on pushing shit out and out all the time. There's no apolitical classroom.
Do you know what's going on in your kid's school? If not, now would
Not that fucking learning.
be a good time to take a look. Here's what you're likely to find. According to the education establishment, the purpose of public education is no longer
Education
just
establishment. They're trying to learn your kids.
to teach the
Three
3
Rs.
R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. It is to awaken students to the fact that they live in a country that has been, remains, and will
Racist?
probably always be racist.
Ah! Who saw that one coming, huh? Why do they want so bad to deny racism? We can talk about systemic racism here in a minute. No one's saying it will always be. Now, to be fair, there will probably, yes, always be racist people, for sure. That's just kind of human nature with, pattern recognition and not knowing something. But in between that, we can educate people and we can work, maybe not for a very long time, but weed out and pull out systemic racism, which is generally what people are talking about here, not overall just racism. But anyways.
Here's how the American Association of School Administrators, AASA,
All right, hold on. Real quick. Max Eden, Senior Fellow, Manhattan Institute. I remember someone also worked at the Manhattan Institute that PragerU had on before. Looks like he works for the New York Post on occasion. Let's get an idea of who we're learning here from, should we? Shall we? So this is the manhattaninstitute.org. Early education, school choice. Okay, federal education policy and school discipline. Gosh, he doesn't. So he can download his image later. School choice, meaning that they don't want them learning the things that are generally found in science or anything. Just we want to choose what we teach them. Eden's work has appeared in scholarly and popular outlets such as the Journal of School Choice, Encyclopedia of Education, Economics, and Finance, Washington Post, U.S. News and World Report, National Review, Claremont Review and Books, The Weekly Standard. He holds a BA in history from Yale. I feel like we're not going to get a good idea of what the Manhattan Institute is here, but I've looked it up before, but I forget here. The mission of the Manhattan Institute is to develop and disseminate new ideas that foster greater economic choice and individual responsibility. That sounds like something I know that is familiar, a common talking point from the GOP. The Institute, which, by the way, the personal responsibility thing, as we know, basically kind of ignores a lot of science involved. Blames basically people that aren't successful on personal responsibility, even though we know that there's a variety of socioeconomic factors that limit or help push somebody up the social strata in the world and in the U.S. The Institute serves as the leading voice of free market ideas shaping political culture since our founding in 1977, ideas that have changed the United States and urban areas for the better. Really. Welfare reform, tort reform, proactive policing. Lovely. And supply side tax policies, which we know don't work. among others, are the heart of Manhattan Institute's legacy while continuing with what is tried and true. We are consistently, no, not true, maybe tried, sure. We are constantly developing new ways of advancing our message in the battle of ideas. It is no longer, by the way, the marketplace of ideas. It is now the battle of ideas. In 2017, the Manhattan Institute celebrated its 40th anniversary. Please enjoy its interactive timeline. Jesus. Conservative 501 nonprofit American think tank focused on domestic policy and urban affairs. Yeah, okay.
They recently described its mission. At a time of obscene inequities, merely trying to compensate is not enough. AASA's work must go further and become actively anti-racist.
Yeah, true.
Being anti-racist sounds simple and laudable. Treat everyone the same. A version of the golden rule. What could be wrong with that? Nothing. Except that's not what the educational elite means by anti-racism.
The educational elite? First off, dude, you went to fucking Yale. Shut up. Secondly, what is the educational elite? Are you trying to dog whistle there, or what is this? Secondly, though, like, what he's probably going to go in this idea of equality versus equity, which becomes a common talking point. You can treat everybody equally, but because of the systems that are in play, not everyone is treated or has the same equal equality of opportunity. You can say that people are equal in the name of the law, but that doesn't mean that's how practices have been done, i.e., everyone is technically legal under the law, yet, however, police black neighborhoods more, they catch more crime because they're there more, and then have now evidence that they need to be there more because more crime happens, so they put more cops there, and then they get more crime, and then they see that they need to put more cops there, so they get more guns, yada yada. We get it, right?
Racism. Anti-racism, in its current formulation, does not mean equal treatment of others. It is an all-encompassing ideology that demands that white people accept that their behavior is either implicitly or explicitly racist, and has been for...
No one has ever said that. It's not talking about white people. Now, most people are racist, including black people. There's a lot of them. I mean, like people, as in racist people. Or people that are racist. A lot of people are, naturally, in some extent, racist. I've had racist thoughts that I then think and go, you know what? That was pretty racist. I probably should look at that and then look how that affects how I treat people or do anything like that. That's not to say that all white people are racist or KKK members or are trying to hurt black people. Now, what I was saying, yes, everyone can be at times racist. The general idea is that, unfortunately, it does affect black people more, even if, yes, you can say a black person can be racist. However, like myself, white people tend to have more power and social power and authority in the US and in many countries. Excuse me. And so, racism from me and from other people like me causes more harm, obviously. Now, again, I've done, not as much done, but have thought sometimes racist things, right? When I first came to New York, sometimes I looked over my shoulder a little bit more when I was in Harlem because I was a little bit more nervous. I'm not used to it. People see you looking weird, and now people that live there might look at you weird, and now there's new tensions being created, right? But that's because of preconceived notions. Excuse me. There's some of that active racism. Now, on a liberal side, there's obviously a very kind of like liberal or whitewashed racism as well. You might see it's like, oh, wow, this guy speaks very well. Like, you're surprised by that, right? Or, oh, it's nice to see that a black family still together or whatever. The fact is that these things are not, like uncommon. Actually, I was reading that black fathers tend to actually be more involved with their children than others in this country. Now, whether that, going off of this other data or whatever, when you think things like that, when you identify it, you're like, you know what? That's a preconceived notion that is pretty racist. Then you correct. I'm not saying these things aloud. I'm not trying to act on them. But the thing is we're all products of our environment. And for hundreds of years, for 100 years, there's been a film industry that's been racist, that's been predominantly white supremacist and are owned at least by white people. Same thing with literature, art. So these things are passed down to us either subliminally or directly from family. So yes, of course, this comes up. Your job is to identify those things. And sometimes you might not be able to. Sometimes people may have to tell you. And then you act accordingly and change, and actively change. It's not fun. It's not uncommon. And it sucks to realize that you're not always such, that you might have preconceived notions. However, it is important to realize what they're not identifying on purpose, mind you, is that these are products of a system of that is a few hundred years old that has worked its way through government, art, literature. So of course, it is continuing and perpetuated. And yes, you need to provide a better equality of opportunity and not just treat everyone equal, because by law, that is technically already the case. Although, guess what? Trans people are discriminated against. Homosexual people or gay people are discriminated against. Black people, brown people, Jewish people are obviously discriminated against. We may have laws that say everyone is equal, but not everyone has the same opportunities to succeed. A lot of that comes from economic redlining in neighborhoods, which has been intentional. The fact that in some states, even recently, they denied certain IDs, voting IDs, making sure to get the ones that had the most black voters. Like, yes, sure, there are laws. Doesn't mean that the system doesn't find ways. We need to ensure equality of opportunity.
At least 400 years. The catch-22 here is that to say you're not racist only proves how racist you really are.
No, it just proves that you're ignorant and you're just unaware. But if you radically try and defend yourself over and over again, well, then maybe it is you.
That is, you are so racist you don't even know it. And if this accusation upsets you, that's proof of your white fragility. Education Week's Classroom Q&A blog tells teachers that, as Ibram X. Kendi, the author of How to Be an Anti-Racist, would say, there is no not racist. There is only racist and anti-racist. Your silence favors the status quo and the violently oppressive harm it does to black and brown folk everywhere. What Kendi is saying is, if you don't voice active agreement with him, you are a racist.
That's not what they said. So, no. I don't know we got this idea of agreement. It's just not to be racist. But there are, yes, lots of things stooped in racism and say, if you agree with him, no. There's a lot of people that have different ideas on that. That's not what was being said.
And if you treat people equally, regardless of race, you're also a racist. Anti-racists embrace racial discrimination, as long as it's done on their terms. As Kendi has said, the only remedy to racist discrimination is anti-racist discrimination. The only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. I understand how wrong this might sound. It turns the Martin Luther King concept of racial equality on its head. But that's exactly the point. Lorena Germain, who chairs the Committee on Anti-Racism for the National Council of the Teaching of English, makes this clear. At the height of the recent urban unrest, Germain wrote that arsonists should serve as a model for teachers. Educators, what are you burning? Your white-centered curriculum? The school's racist policies? Your racist-ass principal? The funding for police and schools versus counselors? What are you burning? Germain's call to commit arson may
okay, dude. I think that might have been hyperbole. So chill. He wasn't saying to go commit arson, but oh.
Educators, what are you burning? Model for teachers. At the height of the recent of the teaching of English,
Okay, so this is hyperbole, sure. Yeah, they're just saying, what are you burning down to build back up? There's a lot of hyperbole at play here. And with the guy who was writing in here, only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. Yeah, present discrimination against racism and those who defend it. I think that's pretty obvious.
In concept of racial equality on its head.
We cannot accept it, which, mind you, Martin Luther King was for, and Malcolm X, obviously, were pro calling out the white people that upheld these institutions, which then he goes on and invokes MLK's name because they want to now that they're done hating him, because he also had some socialist beliefs as well as being black. Who knows what they hated him more for? Now they'll use his name in vain and in a enlightened point of view. Okay.
But that's exactly the point. Lorena Germain, at the height of the recent urban unrest, Germain wrote that arsonists
10,000
should
people
serve
watch
as a
this,
model
by the
for
way.
teachers. Educators, the counselors, may have been metaphorical, but her call to get rid of the traditional school curriculum is not. A lesson plan created by the New York City Culturally Responsive Education Working Group, Transforming Our Public Schools, a guide to culturally responsive and sustaining education, tells teachers that the whole Western canon is rife with horrible stories and atrocities of who we are as people of color. For their part, The National Committee on Social Studies has promised to flood our children with counter-messages until there is no racial inequality in economic opportunity, no racial inequality in education, no racial inequality in incarceration rates, and no brutality from police and others.
Yeah, per capita, dude.
If
or
that
like
sounds to you a lot more
proportionate.
like political indoctrination than education, you would be right.
It sounds like
New
you're
York
doing some
State now
political
encourages
indoctrination.
teachers to incorporate current events, even if they are controversial, into instruction.
Well, they should be. We should be learning about what's going on around in our world and talking about them.
And to utilize tools that encourage students to engage with difficult topics, power, privilege, access, and equity, constructively. We might all wish that as cultural and political polarization reaches into more and more areas of American life, schools could remain an apolitical oasis where children can learn to read.
No. Politics are the personal. Oh, sorry. Political is the personal. We're loving to try to get at this idea that they shouldn't learn politics. They're too young and too, like, dude, politics affects them too, mind you. The climate affects them, mind you. Yeah, I don't care that they're learning this. I'm actually quite in favor. Politics is not some weird abstract thing that just is for the grown-ups to talk about when we have opinions. It's not. It's much more than that. It is what we are doing with our lives, how we are bettering ourselves. What do we see the future for ourselves?
Right, and develop skills of socialization. But if that's what you want for your children, then just know that anti-racist educators think that you are part of the problem. According to a writer for Teaching Tolerance, a project of the Southern Poverty Law Center, anti-racist educators recognize that schools today are doing exactly what they were built to do in this country: exclude, silence, erase, promote white supremacy.
Yeah.
An anti-racist approach to schooling could very well mean an ending to schools
They are doing
as we
that.
know them. That is certainly true. The National Council on the Teaching of English insists there is no apolitical classroom.
There's not.
The
No,
educational
agreed.
elite has a very clear lesson plan in mind for your...
Who is that? How are they so elite? You mean the teachers that have to buy their own supplies, that don't have much money to teach their children? Is that the educational elite that he is talking about? Is he talking about grassroots politicians, like councils, like school councils? Like, what the fuck is he talking about, the educational elite? You mean the thing that is so underfunded? That's the elite? Shut the fuck up, dude.
Your children. If you're okay with it, you can send Johnny and Jennifer off to school with a glad heart.
Johnny and Jennifer.
If you're not okay with it, better talk to the principal or get ready with a plan B. I'm Max Eden, Senior Fellow at the Manhattan Institute for PragerU University. Thank you for watching this video.
Please pay us. We're really broke.